new technology, so it's starting to become more used in the industry. Okay, so what she's gonna do is, see this hole right here? Mm-hmm. If you cover that hole, it's gonna create vacuum. When you let it off, it'll release the vacuum, okay? So you can turn this on. Try to lift those up. It's not gonna work very well. That joint right there, it's not creating vacuum. They make a whole bunch, see how that has a pin that can come off? They make a whole bunch of different sizes of these for different sizes of paver. We should have went and got a bigger. Pick up the book. Or pick up the, probably just. I was thinking like, that's just gonna pick up the cover to the book. That's a big paver gun. I can place the paver right where I want it. Pick up another one.
So as you saw from the video, that was Afton, my classmate. She was, I guess, demonstrating how to use the airlift vacuum. It's the backpack she had. It's essentially a vacuum. It's for paver installation, and so it's kind of newer technology. Instead of bending over to install pavers, with the larger ones, you can use that, and you, as you saw in the video, you cover up the hole, and you pick up the paver, and then you can place it. And it's actually kind of it can be helpful because instead of trying to slide it into something, you can just drop it right into place, which is kind of interesting. We also, this week, got more into the textbook of the ICPI installers course, and we talked a little bit more about the equipment as well as hazards of paver installation, and then kind of how things run when you are installing pavers. So on the equipment side, we discussed more. There's a number of things. Well, so there's a number of things that we on installation crews that we can do to be safe and avoid hazards. And ICPI kind of laid out a couple of, along with OSHA. Yeah. Let's see. So talking about safety and hazards in the workplace, specifically with paver installation, we got into a little bit about OSHA, which is Occupational Safety and Health Administration. It's in the US. And they kind of made a 4-point workplace program that helps businesses be safe and avoid liability and costs and things like that. And that 4-step program, which was introduced in 1989, the first one is management, commitment, and employee involvement. So when establishing hazards and safety in the workplace, it's not just the employees have to focus on it, it's managements have to commit and employees have to be involved, because management might not know all of the hazards and employees are the ones that are dealing with the hazards, so they have to be able to be involved and committed in the safety process. Work analysis is another thing. In a business, you might not know all the hazards, as I said before, but being able to analyze every tool that you use and every process to see how you can make it safer, identify the hazards, and things like that, which leads into the 3rd step, which is hazard prevention and control. So what can you do? You identify a hazard in the workplace, and what can you do to prevent it or minimize it or control it? And that kind of goes into different controls that you can do in the workplace when using equipment or processes, and that's engineering controls, administrative controls, and then personal protective equipment or PPEs. So engineering controls are kind of things like on a saw that has the cover over the blade, or there's like kill switches. There's a number of things that equipment has that are engineering controls that are built into the machine to protect the user or the people around it, and that's it's built in the machine so it protects more people because anyone would be protected from it. It's not like a process where people have to like follow a certain step. Administrative controls are kind of like what I was just saying, like steps to take in order to be safe. When spraying pesticides, an administrative control is to make sure you're not spraying where the wind is blowing in your face, right? So if you're spraying chemicals and then the wind's blowing really hard, it's going to blow in your face and then you're going to, get sick. That's an administrative control, things that reduce the risk of the hazard, but are more focused on the process of it. And then personal protective equipment, or PPE, is everyone knows them. They're the goggles, the gloves, the masks, when you're using a chainsaw, you got to use the special chaps that if the chainsaw slips, it doesn't go through your leg, things like that. And those are there and should be used if the hazard cannot be controlled through engineering or administrative controls. And sometimes you just need to use them anyways. There's no avoiding, pesticides. You can make them safer, but there's only so much you can do. You still need to wear a mask and goggles and gloves and long sleeve shirt and things like that. And that's just an example. With pavers, there's a number of hazards. Your fingers could get smashed. You could hurt your back from lifting too much. You could hurt your knees from kneeling. And there's certain tools out there to prevent this, and there's also processes and techniques and things like that to avoid any of these hazards. One of the prime examples of a very serious hazard, though, involving paver installation, is silica, which is found in concrete, and when an exposure to that can be very deadly. So when they're cutting pavers and there's a lot of dust in the air, breathing that in can be very harmful. So ways to prevent that. Administrative controls are, making sure you're wearing a mask and that you're certified and that there's not too many people around while you're cutting, things like that. Personal protective equipment is, you wear an N95 mask, one that filters out the particles so you don't breathe them in. You wear goggles, you maybe not on a windy day, you cut, or just things like that. And then there's also engineering controls. The paver saw, and we'll go over that in a minute, but the paver saw usually has like a vacuum attached to it, so it sucks up the dust, or some saws have kind of a hose attached to it, and that as it cuts, it gets whatever it's cutting moist, it gets it wet, so the dust doesn't fly everywhere, it gets soaked into the water. And so that's an engineering control. And there's other examples out there. Going back to some of the hazards, kneeling is a huge hazard. You're installing pavers all day, you're getting up and down, kneeling. An administrative control is you don't kneel. You actually bend your back over and you keep your legs straight to prevent injury to the knees. Another is a tool. It's like a knee brace that you attach to the leg, and it allows you to kneel down and stand up really quick, and it also protects your knee from too much strain, and so that's one way to help. Another, and then the saw, like I was saying, this is a paver saw, and so they use it to cut pavers. The tip is actually diamond tipped, and it's kind of flatter tip, but it's used for cutting concrete. So, and that has a hose attached to it, so as it cuts, it sprays water to help keep the dust down. And so that's just some of the stuff we talked about. And then as you saw from the vacuum, That's just one way to prevent bending over and hurting your back. And so there's that. Some other things we talked about is kind of job planning. And it may seem obvious, but it's important to remember that job planning includes managing your time, and for installing pavers, where do you place material? You don't want to place your material all on one side of the site where it has to be hauled throughout the project, because that just wastes time, that wastes money. So there's and it's more labor needs to go into that. So there's just some of that part of that planning process. And of course, designing, or according to the design, laying out the pavers in a way that allows you to move freely through the work site without having to move things around constantly and getting in your own way and things like that. So we just kind of talked about some of that and some of the worksheets involved with the job site, and maps and designs and proposals, drawings, things like that. So that's just some of the stuff we talked about today, and it seems like it's going to be a good time learning more about paver installation. So hope you stick around and enjoy.